Hello, everyone. I want to try to just make a brief announcement for this morning and going forward for the week. So I'm doing a general announcement for all my classes, except I'll just do a little short set of comments specifically for my World Civ 106 at the end that nobody else has to listen to. So, happy July 4th. I hope you all have a safe and enjoyable time with your family and friends. I would like to extend an offer of you can turn in your work late tomorrow by 10:30. That's not going to help everyone so much. I would like to extend it further, except the problem is that I also have another job, and it's going to be my time to be able to catch up with a grading for you. It is what it is. We live in an economy in a world where we all have to do 2 jobs plus school and all this other stuff, right? So the bottom line is, though, I mean, look, in the online world, we also don't get officially holidays, and I'm still required to teach all this stuff. So please just understand that. I understand it's very hard to focus on getting any kind of work done when there is an actual holiday that you want to spend with your friends and family. Having said that, okay, so I am going to extend it until 10:30 a.m. tomorrow, and that's a general extension. Some of you have talked to me privately about some things, and our arrangements are what we've made together when you communicate with me about some other issues you might have and other arrangements time-wise. So I'm just going to say a few things briefly, just because I am a history professor and we have to stir things up a little bit. And so I just want to throw out some alternative historical thoughts in the context to our holiday. And I think that it's good to do that in light of the fact that America is so divided. I'm going to kind of really just throw out a few things really quick. So this, first of all, we need to remember this isn't the day that that the United States became independent. It's the day that the founders made a declaration. This was an act of treason, and it became heroic once we won, and it would have remained treasonous unless we were going to win. King George, the king, the monarchy was our monarchy. The redcoats were our police and law enforcement. And we were subjects of the British Empire. And when we attacked them, it was just as dramatic as, let's say, somebody attacking a police or U.S. military now for in terms of how the empire thinks. Now, what we know is that for the colonists, they didn't feel like they were a part of the empire anymore. They felt separate, and they felt like they were being taken advantage of, and that was part of the problem. Not all of them felt that way. Some were loyal to the crown, and they were loyalists. And the country that remained a part of that is on the top overhead of us is Canada. So what's interesting about us, we got to remind ourselves, is that we conceive of freedom and liberty through violence and revolution. Canada is an independent nation now that happened slowly over time. They did not have a violent revolution to get their freedom. You know, there's this joke. It goes something like this. How do you get 40 Canadians out of a pool? You ask them to get out of the pool. Now, the joke is, I know people from Canada that they don't all, that's a stereotype. But the stereotype is that they're law-abiding. They're very good about rules. When I was in Vancouver, British Columbia, in Canada, I certainly noticed there's a much more, I don't know, it's like rule. I mean, how do you get 40 Americans out of a pool? You don't, right? Who gives you the right to get me out of the pool? I mean, we have this idea of kind of personal entitlement, if you want to put it that way, compared to, let's say, other nations. And this is maybe typical of coming out of a revolution, you know, the idea that that's our sovereign right to rebel. Except we don't always think that way, right? Because even though the Tea Party, and there was a conservative movement named after the Tea Party, were people who destroyed private property to make a political point, when that's happening here in Portland or somewhere else, that bothers a lot of people. When people storm the White House and destroy property, it bothers a lot of people. Really, I think a good question for Americans to ask themselves is, are we really bothered by riots or stormings of capitals or any of these things? Are we bothered by the political perspectives that maybe we don't agree upon? Americans have a very inconsistent set of ideas about where it's okay or not okay to rebel and in what means to rebel. But if we're going to have 4th of July, then we've already agreed that we don't have to obey law and order. In a certain sense, a nation built on a revolution is built on a paradox where the state doesn't conceive of the idea that you have a right to do anything against the state, but at the same time you're in existence because of that mentality, right? It's the paradox of the whole thing. And historically, the U.S. government has never allowed anybody to rebel. The Shays Rebellion was crushed. The Whiskey Rebellion was crushed. Declaring to secede didn't work out. So, we just have a lot of these things to think about. Now, here's the other side of it. And by the way, I'm going to kind of just do a few more sides and I'll finish this up. I have a lot of Native American friends out here now that I live in Portland. I mentioned this in one of my other videos. They absolutely loathe this holiday and there's no celebration. And from their perspective, why would they? Literally, this is our Declaration of Independence was the expansion of the genocide of their culture and their lifestyle, their whole world. And I just don't think a lot of folks really appreciate that. Even if you look at the Declaration of Independence, look at the end of it, the part we never read. The colonists were complaining that the British were abandoning them to the rebellions of the natives who were actually attacking the colonists for, invading their space. So from an American Indian, many call themselves still American Indian out here, by the way, but American Indian or Native American perspective, this holiday is gloomy. It's a tragedy. For Black America, now, many are in the military, and there's a lot of conservative Black Americans, but at the same time, even if you talk to them, what does this holiday mean? I mean, Frederick Douglass, if you know who that was, he wrote basically, why would I celebrate the 4th of July? He was a freed slave. Even at the time, by the way, of the revolution, this contradiction of all men are created equal, we're rebelling for liberty, but we're going to have slaves, was seen as kind of hypocritical in a big way. Samuel Johnson, this English thinker in Britain, he said, how is it, and I'm quoting him almost directly, the loudest yelpers of liberty are the drivers of the Negro. That was his quote. In other words, they have slaves and then they're complaining that they're being mistreated by the empire, that they're not given their freedom and liberty, right? So then there's that. And then, so we look, we have a complex legacy. Now, internationally, many saw the Declaration of Independence, especially in Europe, as one philosopher said, the Enlightenment in action. That the 4th of July, declaring independence from empire is going to be an inspiration to the world and looked at in a very positive way. Ho Chi Minh of the Vietnam, the communist guy, he based his Declaration of Independence for Vietnam on the U.S. Declaration. Now, by the way, we didn't think, here in the French are very much into celebrating their independence. But the French occupied Vietnam, and the Vietnamese fought to get independence from them. And then we gave military aid for the French to reconquer the Vietnamese. And then the Vietnamese kicked out the French to be independent. And then we invaded them and told them how dare they pick a system that we disagree with called communism during the Cold War. And so we've also had a lot of contradictions in terms of our messaging about, what does independence mean to other nations in the world? Does other people have a right to pick their own destiny, even if it doesn't sit right with what our conceptual framework is? Or maybe that's just a part of broader realpolitik, and our ideals don't really matter and outside of our own kind of like insular propaganda, or do they, right? So I'm not trying to put a kill on the holiday. I just want to, but I do kind of want to put these perspectives out to remind us that, look, and this is what I want everyone to do. The last thing I'll say on this. People who value this day and this holiday and cherish independence, especially those of you also that have been in the military and so forth, that's a logical thing to do. And that it's rational. And it's easy to see how that seems right. And for people who are repulsed by it or have issues or some discomfort around the holiday, that's also logical depending on the perspective that you have. You might have a great uncle in your family and you find out he's not so good to his wife. But he's good to you, he's not good to his wife. He can be two things at the same time. So maybe, you have this positive reaction to something. And I think this is how all of history operates, in my opinion, by the way. Depending on where you're at in the context of the story will depend on your view of the whole thing. So just keep that in mind. So having said that, enjoy your holiday. Never mind, I'll save the rest of the announcement for 106 later on. This is it for all my classes, and I got to go to my other work meeting because I'm a busy guy, and then I'll come back and grade some more, and I'll try to make the day a little more relaxed later on. All right, we'll be in touch.